Sutra of Choice, Law of Choice. The unconscious mind always chooses the best option from those available. Those who have more degrees of freedom and options tend to succeed. Variability is a tool through which we expand our possibilities and gain freedom of choice. The more options we have for responding to a situation or problem, the higher the likelihood that we can choose the most appropriate one. Let's illustrate this with an example. Suppose you need to hang a picture. If you only have a screwdriver, you can try to do it with that, but it may not be very effective. However, if you have a full set of tools, including a hammer, the task becomes easily and quickly solvable, and you can use the most suitable tool for the job. But for this range of possibilities to open up before us, the situation must expand our degrees of freedom and provide room for maneuver. The first impression of what is happening around us can sometimes form very quickly, in just seconds. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Blink, The Power of Thinking Without Thinking, writes, "The part of our brain that makes rapid decisions is called the adaptive unconscious, which functions like a giant computer." People have survived as a species because we possess another type of decision-making mechanism capable of conducting very rapid analysis based on limited information. Trusting the unconscious helps us choose the most suitable option from those presented. If we compare consciousness and the unconscious, they are related like the tip of an iceberg to its submerged portion. The unconscious governs a vast array of mental processes and phenomena that are beyond the control of consciousness. Insight, inspiration, premonition, intuition, all these are manifestations of the unconscious, its language, through which it regulates our actions. The same can be said of irresistible desires, impulsive actions, and intuitive choices that guide us toward what is best for us and what our nature strives for. Incidentally, laziness, tardiness, mistakes, and many illnesses are often signals from the unconscious, indicating a wrong path that could lead to trouble. By letting go of the reins of rationalization and trusting our premonitions and intuition, we can listen to ourselves and allow the unconscious to make the best choice for us. The capabilities of our unconscious mind are astounding. A person can unconsciously perceive information, such as learning during sleep, or hypnopedia, process it, and solve problems that are not amenable to conscious resolution, including unconsciously using past personal experience. Every action we take is preceded by a construction of choices from the information stored in the unconscious. And without realizing it, we use the program that was previously applied in a similar situation. These complete programs are known as fixed action patterns. A person forms a fixed pattern largely through the accumulation of individual experience. For example, we sometimes don't understand why we don't like a certain person, but it's the work of the unconscious, which finds fixed patterns from past experiences warning us that a similar combination of qualities in a person once caused us a lot of trouble. The selection of programs continues until the best match for our request is found. That is why in any new situation, those with more options and fixed action patterns, i.e., degrees of freedom, always win. Many philosophers and writers have spoken of trusting this powerful force, the unconscious, which far exceeds the capabilities of common sense. Always follow your inner voice. Albert Schweitzer. Premonition, deep understanding of the situation, and assessment of potential are all the work of the unconscious. And only after the unconscious gives its verdict does our rational mind fit facts and figures to explain why a particular choice was made. Often, further calculations are simply meant to provide a mathematical basis for an already made decision. The more options we have, the better the unconscious can choose the most suitable one. The principle of having multiple options as the key to making the right decision underpins political management models. As the famous German sociologist and philosopher, one of the founders of social systems theory, Niklas Luhmann, asserted, real power belongs to those who can offer more alternative solutions in a problematic political situation. History shows that the ability to see multiple options and follow unconscious impulses has always distinguished great rulers and commanders. It was through the skillful use of both their rational and unconscious capabilities that Napoleon Bonaparte became the greatest of the great. Two dominant traits of his character helped him: an iron will in carrying out his plans and an incredibly developed freedom of imagination. Here's how he spoke about himself: "My genius lies in the fact that with one quick glance, I could grasp the difficulties of a matter while simultaneously seeing all the resources to overcome these difficulties. This is what gives me my superiority over others." A person must make a choice. This is his strength, the power of his decisions. Paulo Coelho. Therefore, our task is to expand the number of possible actions for comparison and selection. The more options and information we have about them, the easier it is to make a choice, and the better the option we can choose. The key is to give the unconscious the opportunity to make the right decision. Sigmund Freud built his famous theory around the idea that the unconscious determines our behavior, guiding consciousness to the right decision. According to his theory, the two primary subconscious drives, thanatos and eros, are always behind the numerous varieties of our desires, which are often covered or sublimated to achieve biological goals in a culturally acceptable form. One of the founders of modern sociology and the theory of elites, the Italian thinker of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Vilfredo Pareto, echoed this idea, asserting that conscious decisions are merely post hoc justifications for our actions, with these decisions being mere derivatives, i.e., products of unconscious emotional motivations. Modern psychologists also emphasize the significant role of the unconscious in the decision-making process. Researchers at Carnegie University discovered that the subconscious continues to search for solutions to problems even when we are engaged in entirely different activities. In an experiment, 27 people underwent tomography while choosing the best car. All participants were given certain information about the cars while their brains were being scanned. However, during the experiment, participants were asked to remember several numbers to distract them from thinking about the choice. Tomography showed that both during the actual decision-making process and during the distraction task, the brain's visual and prefrontal areas responsible for decision-making worked in the same mode. Moreover, those test participants whose brain activity continued for a longer time chose the best car. Scientists concluded that if the subconscious has enough time to analyze, it will find the best option among all the solutions, even without your active help. In moments of doubt, boldly follow the suggestion of your inner voice if you hear it, even if nothing else urges you to act as it advises. Daniel Defoe. Therefore, if we are asked to make a very quick decision, such as urgently buying a last-minute tour, our subconscious will not have time or options to think it over. In this case, we are likely to make a mistake and later regret the decision and the money spent. Diversity of options and freedoms leads to creative solutions of new, better quality, says psychologist Caroline Turner. If our subconscious has enough freedom and time to analyze all the available options, it can synthesize the best solution to our problem. Our ancestors likely also suspected the brain's miraculous ability to work without our active involvement. That's why, in a situation of important decision-making, people say, "Morning is wiser than evening," suggesting taking a pause before making a decision. In almost all cultural traditions, there are mentions that beyond the rational, logical thinking of a person lies an ocean of the unconscious, what is often called the soul, the thing's power, the spirit, or God. For the soul is also something prophetic, said Socrates, the famous ancient philosopher, a true sage, and teacher of Plato. Socrates had heard a voice since childhood, which appeared at different moments in his life. He believed that this voice was nothing other than a manifestation of God's will, so he faithfully followed all the instructions of his daemon, as he called it. It is also known that after Socrates was sentenced to death, his daemon fell silent. Socrates took this as a sign that he was on the right path and silently drank the cup of poison in the presence of those who respected him. His followers Plato and the Stoics identified the daemon with the inner voice of a person, or conscience. In Greek mythology, this is a collective name for supernatural beings, demigods, or spirits occupying an intermediate state between people and gods. In Roman mythology, they correspond to the genius, and in Christianity to the guardian angel. Premonition, which is one of the expressions of the unconscious, was written about by Fyodor Tyutchev. O, prophetic soul of mine! O, heart, full of anxiety! Oh, how you beat on the threshold! As if on the edge of a double life. Thus, you are the dweller of two worlds. Your day is painful and passionate. Your sleep is prophetically unclear. Like the revelation of spirits. But to hear this voice when making important and responsible decisions, one must avoid haste and rush. This is constantly reminded of by folk proverbs. Give it time, and the work will be right. Time is better than a master. The more patience, the wiser the person. The kettle will not boil from grumbling impatience. Not in the rain, let's wait. Hurry up, and people will laugh at you. You won't get far if you rush. It's ready, but it's mindless. Who fell behind? The fast one. Who arrived? The steady one. Why is it necessary to wait? Because the unconscious is connected with the subtle world, where time flows according to different laws, and why should we wait? Because the unconscious is connected to the subtle world, where time flows according to different laws and the scale of events is completely different. A person who listens to its commands rises to a higher level of possibilities and freedom. The ancient Greek philosopher Chrysippus of Soli wrote, "Fate is the reason of the universe, or the law of all things in the universe, governed by providence, or the reason according to which what has become, what is becoming becomes, and what will become will become." How can one know the will of fate? For some, it is revealed through prophetic dreams, while others turn to it by casting lots, as was the case with Julius Caesar. Alia iacta est, Latin for the die is cast, he declared when crossing the Rubicon River. Historians note that Caesar took a certain risk, relying on only a small number of legions loyal to him near Rome. But this risk was fully justified, and Caesar eventually became dictator, meaning that by trusting fate, he was able to accomplish his most ambitious plans. Kiev Prince Sviatoslav, one of the heroes of the ancient Russian epic The Tale of Igor's Campaign, learned of the defeat of his son, Prince Igor, from a prophetic dream. The prince's heart filled with sorrow. That night, from evening till dawn, they covered me with a black shroud on my bed of oak, gave me blue wine mixed with sorrow, sprinkled me with fine pearls from the empty quivers of foul interpreters upon my chest. It grew dark on the third day, 2 suns dimmed, both scarlet pillars went out, and with them, the young moons. Darkness covered the river Kyla, the Polovtsians, like a brood of lynxes, pounced on the Russian land. In fairy tales, prophetic dreams are of particular plot importance, guiding the hero on the right path. A Jew dreamed 3 times in a row that his happiness awaited him on a bridge. So he went to the bridge in the hope of finding a treasure, but found nothing, though he walked back and forth on the bridge several times, looking for the treasure. The bridge's guard asked, "Why do you keep walking back and forth on the bridge?" The Jew told him about his dream. The guard laughed at him and said, "Pfft! Dreams are nonsense. Today, while I was napping in my booth, I dreamed that I found a treasure in your stove." The Jew heard the guard's words, ran home, told his wife to bring him an axe, and began to break the stove, despite his wife's lamentations over the foolishness of breaking a perfectly good stove because of a silly dream. The Jew dismantled the stove brick by brick, and suddenly his axe struck metal. With trembling hands, the Jew pulled out a pot from under the rubble, filled to the brim with gold coins. The sages of the East believe that acceptance of objective reality is the best support for finding the right decision, which is already embedded in the situation itself. In Eastern cultures, the work of the unconscious is often reflected as a search for the path of least resistance. For example, the Chinese have a saying, "Young trees bend, old trees break," and the Japanese say, "Willow branches do not break under the weight of snow." The Koreans extend this saying to all rigid trees: "The less a tree bends, the easier it breaks." In Buddhism, the unconscious and therefore the obvious and best choice is described by the concept of Magga, the path to the cessation of suffering. According to the middle way, all things are real, but this reality is changeable and conditional. The middle way suggests evaluating the significance of various phenomena and choosing the best solution depending on circumstances and specific conditions. In Christian teaching, the intuition and unconscious of a person can prompt and choose the right path for any attentive soul, regardless of their faith, as testified by the Apostle Paul, "For when Gentiles, who do not have the law, by nature do what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them on that day when, according to my gospel, God judges the secrets of men by Christ Jesus." Romans 2:14-16. The goal of Christian teaching is the knowledge of the truth that will set you free. John 8:32. "For you were called to freedom, brothers," Galatians 5:13, proclaims the Apostle Paul, and this profound thought is further developed by the Holy Fathers. Christ has freed us from the yoke of slavery and has given us freedom to do what we will, not so that we may use this freedom for evil, but that we may use it as a means to obtain a greater reward, ascending to the highest wisdom. The phenomenon of unconscious choice is also mentioned in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, where we find references to thoughts that a person is unaware of. Unconscious feelings in a person are referred to in the Torah as thoughts in the heart or speech in the heart. Since the unconscious has a strong influence on behavior and conscious thoughts, working on one's unconscious is very important. In the Proverbs of King Solomon, the Almighty says, "My son, give me your heart," that is, correct the world of thoughts in the heart, the world of the unconscious, so that these thoughts are directed towards serving the Almighty. Muslims believe that Allah has endowed man with free will, ikhtiyar, Quran 10:99, by which he constantly makes choices while walking down the street, reading a book, or participating in a conversation. Since every decision is associated with certain consequences that pave the way for a Muslim's future, the believer should rely on Islamic law and make decisions with an eye on pleasing Allah. However, if a Muslim cannot find the right decision and is overcome by doubts, he should perform a special prayer, Dua Istikhara, in which he asks the Almighty for help in choosing and for guidance toward the most appropriate decision. During prayers, which in all religions aim to program a person for the right choice and to establish certain behavioral models in the unconscious, the experience is especially vivid. The images spoken in prayer are stored in the unconscious, and the human brain integrates and adapts reality to fit a certain worldview. At the same time, old action scenarios do not disappear, they temporarily recede, manifesting when necessary. When a similar situation arises, the brain analyzes all available options and chooses the most suitable one in the new circumstances. Thus, prayers and mantras influence life by embedding new models of world perception into the unconscious. The soul knows the measure. Often, we make choices unconsciously, without even realizing it. We might even think that there was no choice or that it was obvious. The ease and correctness of a decision indicate that we made it based on our unconscious, which often helps us make the right choice better than any calculations or facts. By trusting our subconscious, we begin to see the options that suit us, while others simply fall out of our field of vision. We struggle to find a solution because we subconsciously limit ourselves to the confines of the pattern. However, nowhere is it stated that we cannot go beyond its limits. The conclusion: to understand the system, one must step outside it, wrote modern French writer and philosopher Bernard Werber. By stepping beyond the boundaries of consciousness, we unleash the enormous power of our experience, intuition, and wisdom. And, immediately receiving a multitude of options, our unconscious instantly makes the choice the best of all possible.